Welcome back to Biographics. I'm your host, Eric Malachite, and today we're talking about the pioneer and entrepreneur who made the Levi's brand what it is today. Today's script was penned by Larry Holsworth, so be sure to show him some love in the comments. With that said, let's get to it. In December 1870, a tailor in Reno, Nevada by the name of Jacob Davis was approached by a customer who wanted to purchase work pants for her husband, a woodcutter with a considerable amount of junk in the trunk, one might say. The customer informed Davis that her husband was packing so much ass that ready-to-wear clothes he purchased couldn't handle it and a more durable solution was required. The woodcutter also apparently had a habit of cramming his pockets with the necessary tools of his trade, which only exacerbated the problem. But how would one contain so much man? Well, Davis's solution was to reinforce the denim material of the pants he crafted, using copper rivets of his own design to strengthen seams and pockets. Like some pants of the day, the fly was closed using buttons, the zipper, or dong annihilator as it's sometimes known, thanks Karl for that, having not yet been invented. The copper-riveted button fly pants proved popular with Reno's working men, with Davis receiving orders for pair after pair. When a local company approached Davis to create pants for its workers, he approached his supplier for denim and other materials for assistance. That supplier was a San Francisco-based dry goods merchant named Levi Strauss. Strauss instantly saw the profit potential of mass-producing such durable work pants. He joined Jacob Davis in acquiring a patent, issued by the U.S. Patent Office in 1873 after multiple failed attempts. The patent was for fastening pocket opening, using the aforementioned copper rivets. Patent number 139,121. Rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? By then, the partners were manufacturing their pants in a San Francisco factory. However, they weren't really partners. Strauss owned the company, with Davis hired on at first as a shop supervisor and later as a plant manager. Business was brisk, with miners, loggers, seafarers, railroad workers, farmers, cowhands, and virtually all working men eagerly buying up the new pants, made of durable denim and reinforced with rivets. The manufacturers called them waist overalls. The customers, however, called them Levi's, and they still do. Later in 1873, Davis created the design which has since appeared on the back pockets of Levi's jeans, double-stitched in orange thread. It was trademarked and remains in use to the present day, being consistently ranked among the most recognizable trademarks in the world. For the rest of his life, Davis worked for the company Levi Strauss & Company, overseeing the manufacturing of work pants he designed and created, as well as other items of clothing including work shirts, jackets, and overalls. His pants, which could easily have become known as Jacob's, became world famous as Levi's, and Davis died in relative obscurity, though quite wealthy in 1908. His partner, Levi Strauss, became and remains famous around the globe. Here is his story. Levi Strauss was born in 1829 in the town of Butenheim, Bavaria, now Germany, which, considering he later became famous for button-up jeans, is a fun coincidence. The youngest of 7 children with 3 brothers and 3 sisters, the Strauss family was Jewish, and the children were raised in that faith and tradition. Jewish people were restricted to certain areas, banned from some shops and public areas, and subjected to taxes not levied on those not of Jewish heritage. Herr Strauss, Levi's father, was a merchant in dry goods and had long hoped to leave Bavaria for the United States. And 2 of his sons, Jacob and Louis, were planning to immigrate to America in the mid-1840s. They hoped to establish a dry goods business among the Jewish population in New York, to be joined by the rest of the family later. The plans were stalled when Hirsch became critically ill in 1845. In 1846, Hirsch died of tuberculosis. Levi, his mother, and his sisters left Bavaria and journeyed to New York City, arriving in 1847. There, they were met by Jacob and Louis, who, as mentioned, had immigrated earlier, and who had created a wholesale dry goods distributorship, located on Liberty Street in Manhattan. At least, we think. Records of Strauss's early business life aren't exactly easy to track down, due to the majority of his records, including those of his brother's earlier wholesale business, being lost in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. To be clear, we know they sold stuff, we just don't know how much and in what capacity, as the records were quite literally swallowed up by the earth over a century ago. At the time, dry goods referred to a diverse list of products, including pots and pans, hardware, cloth goods, leather goods, sewing materials, and others. Young Levi, while still learning English, began working as an itinerant peddler for the business, employed by his brother Jacob. Such a peddler was known as a drummer at the time. In modern parlance, he was a traveling salesman. Before that, though, Strauss needed a name Americans could actually pronounce, eventually settling on an anglicized version of his birth name, Loeb. It's worth noting that Strauss had seemingly already settled on Levi as his American name long before moving to the States, with him telling the census taker as much upon his arrival in the States. However, whether it was due to his accent or just a plain old mistake on the census taker's part, Strauss's name was recorded on official documentation, at least initially, as Levi. Either way, while Strauss would eventually become known to the entire world by his adopted name, he still went by his birth name when among friends and family. And Karl has a note here that the commonly accepted pronunciation of this name is as if you're about to say the word Loeb, though Lerb is apparently more accurate. You can also say Loeb if you want to annoy people. So thanks, Karl. Levi was helped in his work by the growing number of German immigrants in America's urban communities. Cities such as Milwaukee, Cincinnati, St. Louis, and Louisville featured thriving German communities, with newspapers and magazines published in German, beer gardens where businessmen gathered, and fraternal organizations that celebrated their German heritage. Though his German heritage was helpful in some areas, it proved detrimental in others. 1840s America was a rough and tumble place. Drummers were often greeted with derision, suspicion, and outright hostility in many communities. A heavy German accent was a definite disadvantage when pitching products in a largely non-German area. Local merchants resented the competition, local manufacturers the same. Levi Strauss was marketing his family's wholesale products to retailers, who often already had established business relationships with entities willing to literally run competitors out of town. Yet Levi persisted, and his business grew. By the early 1850s, Levi was settled in Louisville, Kentucky, where he sold his brother's merchandise to local companies. He was well regarded by the business community there, though like many, if not most, Americans of the time, he cast his eyes westward towards California when the gold rush began. There's an old adage that posits when someone strikes gold, you don't start digging, you sell shovels, or in Levi's case, pants. So in 1853, the Strauss family decided they should open a branch of their business on the West Coast. At the time, there was no railroad across the continent. Shipping goods to and from California meant a lengthy and dangerous sea voyage across Cape Horn at the southern tip of South America, a shortened trip which required an excursion across malarial Central America, or a western trek by wagon train across hostile lands, which would include such causes of death as dysentery. Yet California was booming, having become a state in 1850. Clearly, to the Strauss family, a separate branch of the West was called for. California then meant San Francisco, with its safe natural harbor, growing port, and accessibility via steamboat and rail to the mines, logging camps, and emerging farms and orchards. Levi was selected to run the new West Coast branch of J. Strauss & Company, as the firm was called, named for Jacob Strauss, the eldest of the brothers. Levi selected the cross-Panama option for his journey to the west, arriving in San Francisco in March 1854. He was preceded there by his sister Fanny and her family, and took up residence with her. And Karl has a note here. In the UK, Fanny is vulgar slang for vagina. Just thought you'd want to know this. Thanks, Karl. He then set up a new company, Levi Strauss & Company, located at 90 Sacramento Street, later moved to 62 Sacramento Street, San Francisco. His new concern was both a purveyor of dry goods and a manufacturer of cloth goods, including tents, wagon covers, and work pants. He manufactured all of them from canvas or from duck cloth, a type of cotton. Among the items he sold wholesale was a cloth called denim. First manufactured in France, denim is a cotton twill with diagonal ribbing, which gives it a durability superior to other cotton weaves. By the mid-19th century, it was already a popular fabric for use in work clothes, aprons, tablecloths, rucksacks, and other materials. Among the workers in San Francisco, it was popular for pants and coveralls, though the durability of finished garments left something to be desired. The quality of the tailoring determined the quality of the garment. Unreinforced seams fell apart, particularly in wet conditions. Pockets necessary to hold tools, watches, and lunch separated from the garment with use. Higher quality garments meant higher prices, something many workers could not afford. As a wholesaler, Levi Strauss was not concerned with such issues. He sold bulk cloth to tailors, although he did manufacture some goods including tents, tarpaulins, wagon covers, and work pants. He was primarily focused on wholesale. Nor was denim the only cloth he sold to retailers. His firm sold canvas, cotton duck, woolens, linens, and more. Besides fabric, Levi Strauss sold kettles, pots and pans, tableware, hardware, glass, and other items demanded by West Coast retailers, and ultimately the steadily increasing populace of California and other emerging western cities and towns. His company prospered, and Levi's personal wealth grew. So did his reputation among the political, social, and business leaders of San Francisco. Like Levi Strauss, Jacob Davis was not American-born, and like Levi Strauss, Davis was Jewish. He knew the sting of anti-Semitism from his youth in the city of Riga, Latvia, then part of the Russian Empire. He was born there in 1831 with the name of Jacobs Jufus, or Jakobs Jufus, I'm not sure which one is correct here. As a youth, he was taught the trade of tailoring. In 1854, he left Riga and the land of the Tsars, arriving in New York City, where he changed his name to Jacob Davis. From there, Davis began a period of wandering about his new country, settling at various times in Maine, California, New York, and other communities, working as an itinerant tailor. He tried his hand at panning gold in California and Canada before setting up a cigar store in Virginia City, in what was then called the Nevada Territory in 1867. While in Canada, Jacob met and married Anne Parkshire, with whom he eventually had 6 children. He was a very busy man, is what we're trying to say. In 1868, the pressures of a growing family led him to settle in Reno, Nevada, then little more than a railroad stop from the Central Pacific Railroad. There he invested in a brewery, which quickly failed. He then opened a tailor shop and contracted to produce items for the railroad. The Central Pacific was then still under construction as part of the Transcontinental Railroad and provided him with steady work producing tents and wagon covers. Tents exposed to the high winds which frequently plagued the workers in the fields required reinforcement at the seams, and Davis devised a way of using rivets to strengthen the seams. As already mentioned in the intro, a request for durable work pants led him to apply his idea of rivet reinforcement to clothing, and eventually created a demand for similar pants he was simply unable to meet. His 1872 letter to Levi Strauss did not dwell on this problem, but instead discussed the desirability of obtaining a patent for rivet reinforced jeans. The licensing of such a patent to manufacturers would be highly profitable in his estimation. Davis was also somewhat understandably exceptionally paranoid that someone would see how popular his pants were and try to steal the idea, telling Strauss in the letter mentioned above, and I apologize for this attempt at an accent, but this is the way it's written, and I don't know how to read it any other way. I'm sorry. The secret of them pants is the rivets that I put in those pockets. I cannot make them up fast enough. My neighbors are getting jealous of this success. Levi Strauss saw it slightly differently. He was predominantly a wholesaler of goods, although he did manufacture cloth products on a limited basis. Levi saw a patent on a product as a means of warding off competition. Manufacturing of the reinforced denim pants would create a product to be distributed wholesale to his already large and still growing customer base. Among them were the catalog companies, emerging department stores including Marshall Field's in Chicago, Gump's in San Francisco, and many more. By the time the patent for reinforced pockets was obtained, Levi Strauss & Company operated a large tailor shop in San Francisco. Under the agreement between Levi and Jacob, the latter left Reno and moved to San Francisco, where he oversaw operation of the shop. Demand grew steadily. Thanks to Jacob, Levi's jeans were instantly recognizable due to the distinctive logo stitched on the back pockets, something Davis had done long before teaming up with Strauss to distinguish his product from competitors. Retailers were quick to display the jeans where the logo was readily seen by customers. The jeans were similar in many ways to the modern Levi's 501 jeans, though they weren't called jeans yet, being sold as waist overalls. Despite the clunky name, they sported features commonplace on jeans today, being sold with riveted front pockets which themselves featured another innovation of Davis's, a watch pocket. This is that little pocket inside the main pocket you probably keep your change in, and a 5-button fly, or the 5th pocket as it was marketed in the early 2000s. In fact, the only thing distinguishing these proto-pants from modern jeans was the fact they had suspender buttons rather than belt loops. In early advertising for the garment, it was described as being intended to be worn over pants as protection, though they fastened at the waist rather than over the shoulder as bib overalls do. By the 1880s, Levi Strauss & Company were no longer a wholesaler of denim nor any other cloth. Instead, it was a consumer of denim. Gradually, all other lines of wholesale business were dropped, and Levi's became a leading manufacturer of finished pants, made in a San Francisco plant managed by Jacob Davis. Levi's eventually became synonymous with jeans. In 1890, Levi Strauss designated the original design by a lot number, 501. In the 1880s, Levi's manufactured one product, their self-named waist overalls. In San Francisco and the American West, they needed little advertising. Word of mouth sufficed, and the railroads carried the news of the durable pants eastward even as San Francisco-based ships carried it to ports around the world. That wasn't enough for Levi Strauss. The former drummer hired drummers of his own, trained them in sales techniques, equipped them with samples, and dispatched them to meet with wholesalers and retailers across the globe. Today, most, if not all, jeans are marketed chiefly with an eye toward fashion, fit, and style. Not so in the late 19th century. Levi's drummers and supporting advertising presented the product as durable work pants. They were designed and manufactured for men who needed sturdy, long-lasting pants for work. Levi's representatives presented them as suitable attire for the factory floor, the mine shaft, the logging camp, the farm, the ranch, piers, warehouses, loading docks, construction sites, and wherever men labored outside of an office or store. They were unabashedly aimed at what would in a later day be called blue-collar jobs. In this, they had an advantage in the use of denim, which had always been linked to workers' clothes. Originally called serge denim after the region of France where it was first made, denim was a fabric chosen for work clothes from the 17th century onwards in Europe. The word jeans to describe work pants is even older, and is believed to have derived from the word Genoese, referring to material similar to modern denim used to make work pants for Italian sailors in the 16th century. The more you know. Levi Strauss did not stray from the working man's market in his lifetime. His innovations were in the area of marketing, placing his product firmly in the list of needs for the working man, along with tools, gloves, and a lunch bucket. No trace of glamour was linked to Levi's during his lifetime. Indeed, Levi Strauss & Company did not launch a product aimed at women, ladies Levi's, until 1934. Fit was not a particular concern of Levi Strauss either. As long as the pants fit at the waist more or less, they were acceptable. Too short, tuck the cuffs into work boots. Too long, roll up the cuffs. The latter became a fashion trend among teens in the 1940s, when Levi's jeans became a part of daily wear rather than simple work pants. That said, the fact denim jeans were comfortable to wear quickly became one of their chief selling points to workers. As mentioned, jeans were marketed as an item of clothing one would wear over their other clothes. This was largely because work clothes pretty much had to be made of sturdier fabrics like denim or duck cotton, the latter being similar in feel to canvas for anyone unfamiliar with it. And as you might expect, this wasn't very comfortable to have rubbing against your skin for a 12-hour shift down a mine. After a while though, workers began to notice something. Unlike workwear made of duck cotton or similar fabrics, the longer one wore denim pants, the softer they became. In fact, the pants would not only become more comfortable with time, but stretch and wear to fit the contours of your ass perfectly. Anyone watching this with an old pair of jeans they refuse to throw away know exactly what we're talking about here. Comment down below how long you've had your oldest pair of jeans. As a result, workers soon took to wearing jeans as is, and similarly to today, became very attached to their favorite pair, often wearing them for literally years at a time. Which, along with being fantastic marketing for Levi's, highlighted another desirable quality of the pants: the fact they were still functional after years of daily use and only faded on one side. You see, work pants made of other materials were not only constantly stiff and unforgiving, never softening with age, the dye used would bleed through to the worker's underclothes or skin. For anyone curious why they bothered to dye clothes people would wear to shovel shit or dig mines, manufacturers would dye them darker colors to hide stains, with blue being the most popular color as blue dye was generally the cheapest option available. Anyway, while denim jeans did fade, they only did on the outside, with none of the color bleeding through to the worker's legs. A neat and wholly unintended side effect of this being that one could, at a glance, tell how experienced a worker was by simply looking at his jeans and seeing how faded they were. Similarly, jeans also never really needed to be washed, with the material being hardy enough to be simply wiped clean if it ever got dirty. As an aside, it is still the official stance of Levi's that their jeans should only be washed sparingly, recommending a wash every 10 wears or so. Unofficially, they recommend never washing them. Gross, with former Levi's CEO Chip Bergh once noting that he hadn't washed his favorite pair of jeans in like a decade, which just sounds disgusting. Oddly, the science backs this up with research suggesting that after about 2 weeks of daily wear, the amount of bacteria on a pair of jeans remains at the same safe level. For the curious, this was tested by a guy literally wearing a pair of jeans for 15 months straight, meaning theoretically, a pair of jeans, if well maintained, can be worn forever. Of course, if you spill something on them or step in dog shit, absolutely clean them. But for day-to-day wear, washing really isn't necessary or even recommended by the company. And it was exactly this sort of thing that workers back then truly valued, with pairs lasting decades. In fact, exactly how long a given pair of jeans can last is still unknown, as there are surviving examples from over a century ago that could still probably be worn. Hell, in one case, with a pair found in an abandoned mine shaft, the jeans were not only wearable but arguably still fashionable, being ripped and faded in a manner that made them look oddly modern, with one observer noting Jason Momoa could probably put them on and nobody would realize they were over a century old. The jeans even still had the logo on them. Speaking of which, in 1886, Levi Strauss & Company introduced a new trademark. It consisted of 2 horses tethered to a pair of Levi's waist overalls, with drovers urging the horses to tear the pants apart. The trademark remains in use to the present day. Something no longer present, however, is a small disclaimer noting that the jeans are made by white labor, a racist bygone that, yes, for the curious, was present in the jeans found in that mine. So, while they could be worn, we can't imagine any celebrity would want that kind of heat from the press. Well, maybe Kanye. Besides his activities with Levi Strauss & Company, Levi served on several boards and other business activities. When San Francisco created its Board of Trade in 1877, he became its first treasurer. He served as a director of the San Francisco Gas and Electric Company, the Liverpool, London, and Globe Insurance Company, and the Bank of Nevada. In 1897, he created the Levi Strauss Foundation with an endowment for the University of California, Berkeley, which funded and continues to fund 28 separate scholarships at that institution. Levi Strauss was a member of the Reform branch of Judaism from childhood. When he arrived in San Francisco, the city was still a rough and ready boomtown, with the civilizing influences of places of worship and schools still largely overlooked. As one of the city's leading businessmen, Strauss took an interest in improving his adopted hometown. He was one of the leaders of Congregation Emmanuel in joining the Reform movement in the 1870s and supported the synagogue for the rest of his life. In the late 1880s, Levi Strauss unofficially retired from the business he started. Yet he remained in San Francisco active in community affairs and retained contacts with customers and suppliers. He concentrated his time and fortune in philanthropic activities, supporting the Hebrew Orphan Asylum and Home, the Hebrew Board of Relief, and other similar activities. He joined with other prominent San Francisco businessmen in attempting to reform the city's reputation of a less than civilized boomtown, creating an aura of civility and refinement. It was not altogether successful. That San Francisco remained a rough town is evident in an incident affecting Levi Strauss in 1885. In March 1885, a former merchant from Calaveras County named Antonio Gagliardo threatened Strauss by letter, telling the businessman that unless he helped Gagliardo obtain a job within 10 days, he would, and I quote, blow his head off. It seems Gagliardo had previously written Strauss seeking a clerkship in Los Angeles, asking for Levi's help by asserting his influence. Unwilling to do so, Strauss instead sent the disgruntled man $50 to help, equivalent to more than $1,200 in today's money. Somehow, Gagliardo took offense to this. When Strauss learned that Gagliardo had returned to San Francisco, he had the police informed of the threat and the potential assailant's whereabouts. Yet, when the police arrested Gagliardo, Strauss refused to press charges. Instead, he met with Gagliardo and extracted from the would-be miscreant a promise to, and I quote, refrain from carrying his sanguinary promises into execution. Not all of his personal correspondence was so alarming. Strauss maintained correspondence with friends, customers, community leaders, religious leaders, and fellow manufacturers throughout most of his life. He also communicated with family through the mail, leaving a lengthy record of correspondence. In 1890, Levi Strauss & Company was officially incorporated, with the bulk of the stock held by Levi and his 4 nephews. Levi Strauss never married. He had no children of his own. When he died on September 26, 1902, he left an estate valued at about $6 million, about $219 million today, the bulk of which went to 4 nephews, with lesser amounts to other family members and to various local institutions and charities. Jacob Davis, with whom Levi shared the patent for the original riveted waist overalls, died in 1908. Following his death, his son, Simon Davis, took over management of the Levi's plant in San Francisco. During our research, we also found that one of Davis's grandchildren, Ben, continues to sell work clothes using the family name, trading on the elder Davis's reputation for making solid-ass clothes for working men and similarly selling, according to their site, and I quote, rugged, no-nonsense workwear proudly featuring its iconic monkey logo. In the 1930s, jeans appeared regularly in films, often westerns, as well as on characters portraying working men. In turn, western films helped popularize dude ranches in the West. Jeans proved popular for women. By the 1940s, they were worn when gardening, doing housework, and when women assumed the role of Rosie the Riveter, jeans were part of her garb. In the 1950s, jeans, coupled with a leather jacket, or at least a jacket with a turned-up collar, became a uniform of teenage rebellion, popularized by Marlon Brando, James Dean, Sal Mineo, and others. When Levi's introduced their first ladies' Levi's during the Dude Ranch craze in 1934, they produced them not only with a button fly, but with the fly in the front raising eyebrows and prim responses from many. At the time, it was common for women's pants, which were relatively rare, to have the fly on the side. A button fly on the front was considered risque in the extreme, because of its proximity to the vagina. The fact that men's jeans opened at the front for decades and most men, just flopped it out when peeing, seemingly never occurred to anyone complaining. Around the 1940s, the company switched to a zipper fly for their ladies' Levi's, as button fly jeans were considered inappropriate for women somehow. Over time, Levi Strauss & Company expanded and contracted with fluctuating business cycles, world wars, changing public tastes, and other variables that affect all businesses. It has introduced several additional styles, additional brands, expanded clothing lines, and other products. In 2019, it debuted on the New York Stock Exchange with the ticker designation Levi and a valuation of $6.6 billion. In 2023, the company announced it would begin to accept old jeans for recycling into new denim material. Levi Strauss is frequently cited as the inventor of blue jeans, themselves a quintessential American product. Yet it required a fabric invented in Renaissance France, a Jewish tailor and inventor from Saris, Latvia, and another Jewish wholesaler of dry goods from Bavaria to create what became known as jeans, which were largely manufactured in the early days by immigrant laborers in Levi Strauss & Company's San Francisco factories. What could be more American than that? Today, the company founded by Levi Strauss still manufactures riveted 501 jeans, as well as scores of other products, as a global manufacturing Goliath. Its headquarters are still in San Francisco, where its founder intended, but it no longer manufactures its products in the United States. Times change, even while some styles seem timeless. Well, I hope you learned something today, and if you dug this video, be sure to deploy your likes, comment how long you've gone without washing your jeans. Gross. Once again, I wash them after, several uses at least. And be sure to share this video with someone who loves historical deep dives like this. I'm Eric Malachite, and I'll see you next time, Space Cowboy.